Welcome back. Want to go over objects one more time, go a little bit deeper because JavaScript is an object-oriented language and we need to kind of get our minds wrapped around this and comfortable with this because objects in JavaScript are like dogs. They're things, they're objects. But a lot of like a puppy dog, they can also crap on your carpet. So you have to take care of your objects and train them to do what you want, which is all of what JavaScript is about. Everything is an object. A dog might have a tail. A tail is an object. A tail might wag. A car is an object. A horn is an object. A car has a horn, and the horn might honk. So you have this kind of simplified view of the world of objects containing other objects that may do things. So everything in JavaScript is an object. It could be a browser window, a document, a string, a number, a date. Everything is an object. So if you look at English, we have nouns and verbs. These are things and they're actions. Actions are like verbs, things are like nouns. In JavaScript, as we've talked about before, things are like variables, they're like nouns, and functions are the equivalent of verbs. And when you attach nouns and verbs to objects, they're just called slightly different things. They're called properties and methods for nouns and verbs. So a real world example might be a tail, that's the noun, and wag is the verb. In JavaScript, it's very similar. You can tell a verb is a function or a method by the parentheses after it. But you can also attach the tail to the dog, and the dog might be the object. So you would talk about the dog's tail wagging. Kind of an object, a noun, and a verb. It sounds so simple, but you have to tell the computer literally what you're talking about as you select things. So, some methods and properties of web pages might be the document has a title, or the document has a URL. It might be an array with a length, because there are multiple things in arrays. Arrays have verbs or methods. They can push, they can pop, they can unshift, etc., etc. So why do we care? Really? I mean, come on, why do we care? For us as web developers, we want to manipulate the objects on a page. We have to be able to select these objects that we want, and we have to tell them to do stuff. That's the whole idea here. If you look at putting this all together and telling the computer what object you want to select, what you want it to do, we use this convention called dot syntax. You separate all the different objects with a period or a dot, and you go from general to more specific, left to right. A dog dot run, dog dot tail, dog dot tail dot wag. From general to specific, left to right. And this is how you create objects or create selections of objects in JavaScript. So in a web page, you might have a document. A document might have a title. A document might have a form that has a field with an ID of email. Or you might have a command for the document to write. General to specific, left to right. The minute you open up a window in a browser, you've got at least 5 objects. You've got the window, you've got a location of the window, you've got a history of the window, you have document that belongs to the window, and you have navigator, which we'll talk about later. Just remember, an object in JavaScript is a container that has properties and methods, nouns and verbs. And objects can contain other objects. And you just get comfortable with this concept. Some of you are going, no big deal. And yet some of you are still struggling with it. Just get your mindset wrapped around this And these kind of concepts are the hardest part of mastering JavaScript. So you have all sorts of objects in JavaScript. Each object has its own property and methods, and you can access them through .syntax. For example, we've been using document.write. Now, we've also talked about types of objects. We've created strings, we've created numbers, we've created booleans. There's dates and arrays, and you can create your own objects. But all of these things are objects. And the way the system, the model that we have come up with to organize objects is called the document object model. You'll get very, very familiar with this because it all centers around the web document, the fact that it contains objects, and the model or the system that we use to address it. It's all based around a tree structure, parents and children and siblings and things like that. It literally, you use that kind of language. The HTML here might be the root element, but it has two kids. It has two children, the head and the body. The body has at least two children, in this instance, a header and a paragraph, and the paragraph has children. It has its content as a child. You can look over at the head and say the head has a child of title, which has a child of content. The body and the head are siblings, and it becomes something you can wrap your head around by thinking of parents and children and siblings as this tree structure breaks down the elements on a page. If you look at this in code, very simple document, doc type of HTML or an HTML5 document with a root element of HTML, a head and body as siblings, and that's pretty simple. But remember, .syntax is general to specific, left to right. You have an object of document, and you have to use language like getElementById banner. So if an element has an ID of banner and you want to talk to it, you want to select it, you say document getElementById, and in the parentheses, because this is a verb, it's a method, you would put the ID that you want to select. JavaScript is case sensitive, if you remember, so look at getElementById and realize the E and the B and the I are capitalized. This is the camel case capitalization. And if you don't capitalize these things exactly as JavaScript is expecting them, they won't work. It just simply won't work. But we have an object and we have a method. The banner is the parameter of the thing you want to find. The method is like a verb. Now, there's all sorts of different verbs you have available in JavaScript to select the items you want to select. One of them is getElementById. It has a parameter of banner. Another one is getElementsByTagName. And again, the parameter here is A for anchor tag. And you can also get elements by class name. Here we're looking for a class name of subhead. So these are some of the different methods, some of the different verbs we have available to select the items we want to manipulate on a JavaScript page. Now remember, the whole idea is all these technologies work together. Here you have some HTML, paragraph with some content, you have an ID of copyright, and in the document object model, how you would talk to that element in HTML with JavaScript is say getElementById, copyright, but that method, that getElementById, is a method of the object document. So just think about this and how things relate to one another, and what you're trying to do is select items on a page and manipulate them. The problem with the DOM is, quite frankly, Internet Explorer has done their own thing for a very long time, but recently, with version 8 and 9 and 10, especially 9 and 10, they've hopped on the standards bandwagon that Firefox and Opera and Safari and Chrome have been running on for a long, long time. So even Internet Explorer lately has gotten on the Internet Standards bandwagon. Problem is, a lot of people still use 7 and even 6 of Internet Explorer. 8 is pretty good. It's 9 and 10 that's really acceptable as far as web standards. So you have to watch a few of these methods, some of these objects that Internet Explorer went off and did its own thing with. And generally that has to do with classes, and we'll cover a few of those as we go along. Just be aware that Internet Explorer in the past has been a problem, and sometimes you would have to fork your code to take care of the one-off nature of Internet Explorer. But how this works in general is pretty simple, pretty straightforward. You select an element on a page, and then you do something to it. You select something, then you do something. You say document.write, whatever you want to do. You can change the property of an element, you can add new content, you can remove elements, you can extract information from elements, and you can add or remove a class attribute, etc., etc. That's all there is to this. The idea of dot syntax and the document object model is to be able to select an element on a page in a predictable way and do something to it. Pretty straightforward. So that's what we'll do in our exercise. See you there.